dry fitting a piece of tile here that we've cut. It's going to be two pieces mirrored essentially with a seam in the middle. And we're dry fitting this and setting this one in place so that we know where it's going to go. That way we can base our measurement off of for the next one. I'm using a piece of the wall tile. It'll be on the face and on the side returns here as a gauge, because I want to line up my hearth tile with my wall tile and give it some allowance for thinset, about a 1/16, because the trowel I'm going to use for this is a small little V-notch trowel. And these little grooves stand about an 1/8 inch tall when you tip the trowel at a 45-degree angle, right? And they're evenly spaced so that you could smush the tile down within a 1/16 or so. So we're gonna have about a 1/16 of an inch of thinset on the back side of these. So I literally use this as a gauge to line up my hearth. And the reason, again, we're dry fitting this piece is so that we can measure the piece off of it and know exactly where it's gonna go before it goes there. Hey guys, so we're gonna take a measurement for this next piece of tile here on this hearth. And I have a little spacer here, it's a little horseshoe spacer, 1/16 inch, and that's what we're gonna use for the seam here to put a 1/16 inch grout line. And essentially, it's going to act as the edge of the tile. So I butt that, and that's where the edge of tile is going to be. And on this end, I have my little gauge tile, because it's the thickness of the return tile here. And I measure to that, and I add a 1/16 inch for thinset. And I have 41 3/4 would be with my 1/16 of an inch of thinset. So on my fancy dancy little scratch pad on my tape measure, I draw a picture of the tile that I'm going to cut. Okay. And then I draw the measurement 41 3/4 where it's going to go. So I measure my tile out and have a picture. That way I know exactly how it's going to be cut. We'll go 17 1/8. And that gives me a little play here, because this is going to get covered with the fireplace insert, and then this is covered with the tile. So this cut doesn't have to be exactly perfect. You want to have a little room to play, because if you try to get too tight and too greedy, you're just going to have to cut it again. So I have all the measurements I need to make this cut. So I'm going to go make the cut now. We're recording, aren't we?
We're recording now.
Light refraction and all that scientific stuff because of the funky door glass. It's like a rainbow.
It's amazing.
Speaking of rainbows. Speaking of rainbows. All right, so we have our two pieces of tile for the hearth dry fit. Almost exactly where they're going to go. And now I need to install them. In order to do that, I got to make some thinset. And over here we've got some buckets. Bucket with some water in it, so that I can put water into my bucket, and then we put thinset together. And,
yeah.
Here's a bag of thinset. All right, it's pretty much like a cement that is made for bonding. If you use something like liquid nails to glue two pieces of wood together, this is the liquid nails of tile. So I'm gonna put my mask on. I'm going to start with a little bit of water in the bucket. And I wouldn't suggest this for somebody who's inexperienced, but I can kind of estimate how much water I think I'm going to need versus how much thinset I'm going to use. We don't want to just mix up a whole bag for a couple pieces of tile. It's pretty silly. Again, the reason I'm wearing a mask is this dust is very nasty. This paddle bit, this is made for thinset. This is what you use for thinset. It whips the mud up without creating a whole lot of resistance. There's paddle bits that you can use for drywall mud, mixing paint, which is silly, I think, to mix paint with a paddle bit. However, people do it. This one is made to cut through the mud because it's heavier and more dense. So that way you're not fighting it. I stand on the bucket. That way we don't have a bucket moving around, dancing, and sometimes it gets really gnarly. All right, so it started my process of mixing thinset, and I can already tell you, I want more based on how much tile we have there and how much we have to build it up. So I'll add some more water, add some more power. Add some more water. It's a fun game of water powder, water powder. Also, when you're mixing the thinset, you're going to have these dry clumps of powder on the side of the bucket. Take a margin trowel, scrape them off. And we get those dry boogers down into the wet one. Now, before we let it slack, it has a pretty good consistency, but after it slacks, which is the part where it sits for 10 minutes and does whatever it does, add just a touch more water because I don't want it too stiff. There's a reason they call it thin set, but not too thin set. Kind of like peanut butter. Almost like a pudding. If peanut butter and pudding had a baby, they would be, thick enough to stand up and keep its shape, but thin enough to work.
Yeah.
That right there is perfect because in 10 minutes after it slacks, it'll be even a little more stiff and still be thin enough to work with. So we're gonna let it slack for 10 minutes.
Looks like pudding.
Like it says right here on the instructions of this particular brand, you mix it up and you let it slack to 5 to 10 minutes. And then you mix it again. So I'll see you in 5 to 10 minutes.
All right, ready?
Oh man, I just got it all on my leg. This is cool. I'm having a great day right now. What else can go wrong?
Don't see that.
I know. Some spread and thin set here for the large format tile. I'm using a 1/2 inch square notch trowel here. And the purpose of these trowels is to evenly spread what we call mud.
What?
So it makes contact with the backside of the tile 100%. Yeah, 98%. And it gives you some room to play to set the depth. You could smush it down a little. If we have about 3/8 of an inch of mud here to make contact, the tile could go down at about 3/16 before these. Let me just show you a little example here. Before these make contact. So if I'm touching there and I smush it down to get the elevation of what I want and go down about half the depth before they make contact with each other. So depending on the depth you need for the tile will indicate what size trowel you want to use. And we're combing it evenly. And these air gaps also help just that air get underneath so it can dry. Now we're going to lay our piece, and that requires 2 people.
Shooting.
So now I've got the piece in place. One thing I want to make sure we check is that even with the spacers here and here, giving it the 16th inch spacing, I want to make sure this front is nice and straight. May not be able to tell at the level. But it is nice and straight.
So you're just trying to line up those two edges?
Yeah, and to make sure that they're nice and straight. And we have our 16th inch spacing here. Another thing you like to check, and you can't really tell at the level, something you do with the naked eye, is that you have this surface plane as well. And if we can get the camera down a little lower, you might be able to see that this side is actually slightly higher than this side. So it looks like I can lift it up. See
Oh,
that?
I see.
Yeah. So that they plane nice and perfect. So that when the hardwoods, just aim the camera down now from the top bird's eye, the hardwoods will butt up against this, and they'll be a little lower. They'll be about a 1/4 inch lower. Yeah. That way we don't have any imperfections. You're always going to have some imperfections, just a matter of where you put them. So now I'm going to use some shims to line up this edge here. And it probably will not find a 16th increment here.
Yeah. So, and that's the path I want to follow, right?
Oh,
so I want to
that
do
might
not
work.
just fundamentals, but start going into specialties.
Needs a little more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one out.
With this,
Since the 16th of an inch increment won't quite work, use some wedge spacers and taper so that I can find.
the what? The guy
There we go.
Oh, that's your work. Okay.
I have a meeting.
I've got a meeting.
No, you can do your meetings on your phone.
That's a lot better right there.
I can do my meeting on my phone, yeah. But
We got it.
times I need
Have planes.
information on my big screen. That's what I.
Fun stuff.
Fun stuff.
And then I'm going to put some blocks here for safety. Because when you have tile on thinset,
Oscar.
even though you don't plan on dancing around it or stepping on it,
So Microsoft play nothing.
you don't want it to slowly move because there's nothing pinning it in place in one of the directions. It's not going to go that way because there's the wall in place, but it can fly this way. So what you can do is you take some blocks. Double check for the level that it's nice and straight. And we have a wood subfloor to screw to. There it is.
Yeah, it was.
The blocks that pin it in place. Now it cannot move. Now we wait
One day,
24 hours.
24 hours.
Yep.
These blocks will stay on until the end.
Yep, I'll remove them tomorrow. And then we'll be able to dance on it.
Cool.